It was a humid Tuesday in Jackson, Mississippi. The kind of day where sweat clings to your skin like guilt on a crooked badge. Officer Daniel Pierce, a 10-year veteran of the Jackson Police Department, was cruising down Woodrow Avenue when he spotted something that made his brow tighten. A black man, tall, fit, maybe late 20s, stood next to a silver Mercedes with tinted windows. Dressed in a sharp navy blue suit, he tapped something on his phone, calm, collected. But to Officer Pierce, it didn't look right. Suspicious, he muttered under his breath, his hand already gripping the steering wheel tighter. See, in Pierce's world, a young black man with that kind of car, that kind of confidence, must have been up to something. Drugs, maybe. Fraud. Or worse. Without a second thought, he pulled a hard U-turn, tires screeching across hot pavement. Dispatch, possible 10 to 66, suspicious male. Gonna check it out, he said into the radio. He parked behind the Mercedes, stepped out, hand on holster. Hey, what are you doing here? The man looked up, slightly startled. Excuse me? I asked what you're doing here. You got ID? The man blinked. Yes. But, am I being detained? Show me your ID. Now. A pause. Hesitation. Not from fear, more like disbelief. Sir, I'm just waiting for my assistant. I'm scheduled to give a talk at. I don't care what story you're cooking up, Pierce barked. Hands on the car. Now. The man's name was Julian Miles. And what Pierce didn't know, what he didn't bother to ask, was that Julian wasn't just anybody. He was a Harvard-educated civil rights attorney. He had defended victims of police brutality, sued departments, changed laws. And today? He was invited to speak at Jackson State University on systemic bias in law enforcement. Oh, the irony. But right now, none of that mattered. Because in Officer Pierce's eyes, Julian was just another suspect. Julian calmly took out his wallet, holding it between two fingers. I'm complying. But I want to be clear, I haven't done anything wrong. Pierce snatched the wallet and shoved him against the car anyway. Turn around. Hands behind your back. You're making a mistake, Julian said, his voice tight but controlled. I know my rights. Oh, I bet you do, Pierce sneered, snapping on the cuffs. And just like that, one of the country's most respected legal minds was slammed into the back of a patrol car, all because of a badge and a bias. Inside the station, Julian sat quietly in the holding room, wrists red from the cuffs. He wasn't yelling. Wasn't panicking. Just waiting. Watching. Pierce walked in with a folder, smug. So, Mr. Miles, let's see who you really are. He opened the wallet, flipped through the ID cards. State-issued license. Harvard alumni card. NAACP Legal Defense Fund badge. Then, Pierce froze. His eyes narrowed at a thick embossed card that read, Federal Bar Association, Civil Rights Division. The photo on it? Julian. Same suit. Same calm stare. Pierce blinked. Reread it. Once. Twice. Slowly, the color drained from his face. He looked up at Julian, who simply tilted his head and said, Go ahead. Run the name. Fumbling, Pierce typed into the computer. What popped up next hit him like a gut punch. Julian D. Miles. J.D., Yale Law, dual-enrolled after Harvard undergrad. Clerked for the Supreme Court. Headed several high-profile lawsuits against corrupt police departments. Author of The Pattern of Power, Policing While Black in America. Not only was Julian legit, he was the Julian Miles. The one who testified before Congress. And Pierce had just put him in cuffs. For waiting on the sidewalk. Pierce's mouth was dry. His hands trembled. Julian stood, slow and deliberate. I assume I'm free to go now? And no charges have been filed, Pierce mumbled, fumbling with the key. This was a misunderstanding. Julian smiled, cold and sharp. No. This was profiling. News traveled fast. By that evening, a video, taken by a nearby bystander, was already circulating online. It showed Pierce detaining Julian, shoving him against the car, ignoring his calm protests. The clip went viral. #JusticeForJulian was trending nationwide by midnight. And by the next morning, the Jackson Police Department had a storm on its hands. Reporters crowded the steps of City Hall. Protesters marched through downtown. And in the middle of it all, was Julian. Dressed in the same navy blue suit. Standing in front of a podium. Microphones everywhere. He cleared his throat. Spoke with precision. Yesterday, I was reminded that no degree, no resume, and no legal title can shield a black man from the knee-jerk suspicion of systemic bias. I wasn't just arrested. I was dismissed. Erased. Reduced. Behind him, members of the community stood in solidarity, students, elders, activists. Among them? A trembling Officer Pierce, now placed on administrative leave. Julian continued, I won't press criminal charges. But I will file a civil lawsuit. And I will use every dollar to create a legal defense fund for those who didn't have a camera to prove what happened to them. That was the moment the power flipped. 3 months later, the courtroom was packed. Julian stood tall, representing himself. Pierce sat across the aisle, shoulders slumped, lawyer whispering nervously in his ear. Testimonies were brutal. Audio from the dispatch call. The arrest video. Pierce's record, revealing 5 prior complaints of racial profiling, all brushed under the rug. Julian didn't just expose one man. He exposed a system. When the verdict came in, the room went silent. Guilty of wrongful detainment. Civil damages awarded, $1.7 million. But Julian didn't flinch. Because this story was never about money. After the trial, Julian returned to Jackson State. Not as a visitor this time, but as a guest professor. He launched the Miles Institute for Legal Equity, right there in Mississippi, where the roots of injustice ran deep. Meanwhile, Officer Pierce resigned from the force. Quietly. No statement. No apology. But justice doesn't always need an apology. Sometimes, it needs exposure. Let this be a reminder, judgment can be a dangerous thing when wielded without truth. Power is only righteous when used with care. And sometimes, the very people we try to diminish, are the ones who will dismantle the systems built to suppress them. Julian wasn't just a man in a suit. He was a symbol. A reminder that dignity can't be cuffed. That truth can't be silenced. That the underestimated can be the most powerful force of all. He was back on campus just 3 weeks after clearing his name. You'd think it would have felt like victory. Walking through the same halls where professors once whispered behind his back. Where students stared at him like he didn't belong. But victory felt quiet. Too quiet. And that's when the emails started. No name. No return address. Just 4 words. You don't belong here. At first, he brushed it off. He'd seen worse. Been through worse. But then came the phone calls. Blocked numbers. Breathing. And a voice, low, cruel, familiar. You messed with the wrong boys in blue. Julian knew that voice wasn't just a threat. It was a warning. He'd embarrassed the police. Cost them millions in lawsuits. Made them look like fools in front of cameras and headlines. Now, they wanted payback. It started slow. First, a whisper in the university halls that Julian had falsified credentials. No proof. Just gossip. Then, a complaint appeared, anonymous, of course, accusing him of intimidating a student during a lecture. Again, no names. No witnesses. Just a signature from someone who didn't exist. But the university didn't need facts. Just noise. Suddenly, he was being investigated, not because they believed it, but because it was politically convenient. They couldn't say it out loud. But they didn't have to. Julian Miles was becoming a problem. And somewhere behind it all, one name kept coming up. Sheriff Alan Whitmore. The very man who mentored Officer Pierce, the same cop who slammed Julian's face against his own car for walking while black. Whitmore hadn't forgotten. And now, he was using every string, every favor, every ounce of his influence to crush Julian, not with a gun, but with paperwork, policy, and poison. Julian wasn't surprised. But he was ready. He reached out to Maya Ellis, a former classmate turned investigative journalist with a fire in her voice and no fear in her pen. They met at a small cafe, away from cameras, away from ears. Maya, I need help. This isn't just retaliation, it's systemic. She didn't hesitate. Then we burn it all down. But we do it with facts. For weeks, they dug. And what they uncovered? It wasn't just dirty. It was criminal. Emails from Whitmore's office to university board members. Secret donors to the campus fund, most of them tied directly to the sheriff's re-election campaign. Even back-channel conversations about Julian's removal timeline. They didn't just want to discredit him. They wanted to erase him. And they were doing it with university cooperation. Julian stood before the board with a folder full of truth and fury in his eyes. I have proof, he said. Proof that this isn't an investigation. It's an execution. The room fell silent. An older board member folded his hands, his voice calm, fake concern in every syllable. We appreciate your passion, Mr. Miles. But this university must protect its reputation. Julian leaned forward. Then why do you keep hiring cowards to lead it? No one said a word. But everyone felt the shift. They thought he'd walk away. Quietly. Tired. But Julian had a plan. He and Maya released everything. Emails. Phone logs. Financial records. And at the heart of it all? A 15-minute documentary titled, When Justice Makes You a Target. They dropped it on YouTube at midnight. By noon the next day, it had gone viral. 10 million views. By the evening, the whole world was watching. Students walked out of class in protest. Alumni froze donations. And the university? They tried to spin it, backpedal, deny. But you can't hide rot once the light hits it. And that light? It was Julian Miles. Then came the biggest blow. A whistleblower inside the sheriff's office leaked internal memos. One of them was a spreadsheet. Title: High-Risk Targets. Julian's name was at the top. Right next to it? Monitor. Discredit. Neutralize. Sheriff Whitmore wasn't just corrupt. He was running an entire operation to silence activists, journalists, and whistleblowers. And now? He was exposed. The FBI came knocking. They raided Whitmore's home, his office, his safe. Inside, they found burner phones, wiretap logs, even a handwritten note that read, "Miles is getting too loud." It was over. Sheriff Whitmore was arrested for conspiracy, abuse of power, and obstruction of justice. The university president resigned within the week. Julian? He didn't just keep his job. He was offered a promotion. And the Miles Institute? It got triple the funding it had before. But that wasn't the real victory. The real victory was watching the world realize what happens when you underestimate a black man with truth in his heart and fire in his voice. Julian was never angry. He was righteous. He was never dangerous. He was determined. And in the end, he didn't just survive the system. He rewrote it. Sometimes, they don't come at you with fists or bullets. Sometimes, they come with doubt, whispers, silence. Because silence is how they kill the truth. But when a man like Julian refuses to be quiet, the whole system learns. You can't erase a man who already turned his pain into purpose. And you damn sure can't destroy someone who's already survived your worst.